Okay, we're going to divide polynomials, but before we start dividing polynomials, we're going to just look how to do some long division, period. So, long division, the way that you do this is you just ask yourself, how many times does 12 go into 2? And it doesn't go in any, so it'd be 0, but I don't put a 0 up here because there's no numbers to start with yet. So then I go to the next digit, 2, 8, 28, and I say, how many times does 12 go into 28? Well, 12 goes into 28 2 times, because 2 times 12 is 24. And it can't go in 3 times because 3 times 12 would be 36, which would be more than 28. So we want to go the least number of times so it'll stay under 28. Okay. So then I'm going to subtract these and see what I have left, and I'm left with 4. Then I bring down the 0, and I've got 40. 12 goes into 40 how many times? 12 goes into 40 3 times, because 3 times 12 is 36. I'm now going to subtract those, and 40 minus 36 is 4. Then I'm going to bring down this 8, and I have to ask myself, how many times does 12 go into 48? And it goes 4 times, because 12 times 4 is exactly 48, and so when I subtract I get 0, and since I'm at the end of my number that I'm dividing, that means there is no remainder. So my answer would just be 234. It's the same exact process that we're going to use when we're dividing polynomials. So if you have this down, then you can divide polynomials no problem. If you don't have this down, then you need to maybe watch it again. Make sure you have this down before you go on to dividing polynomials. Okay, so we're going to take x cubed plus x squared minus x plus 2 and divide it by x plus 2. Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to say x goes into x cubed, and no, I'm not worried about the plus 2. That's going to work itself out. I'm just worried about this x. X goes into x cubed how many times? Or another way to think of it is what would I have to multiply this x by to get x cubed? And I would need to multiply by x squared. Okay, maybe I'll do some work over here on the side. If I had x squared then times x plus 2, what would I get? And I would, by the distributive property, I would get x cubed, x squared times x is x cubed, plus x squared times 2, which is 2x squared. And that I'm going to write down right underneath here. X cubed plus 2x squared. And just like I did on my long division, I'm going to subtract. X cubed minus x cubed is 0. X squared, or 1x squared, minus 2x squared is negative x squared. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring down this. And I'm actually going to bring down everything. Okay, just the rest of it. So minus x plus 2. Okay, now what I just did, I'm just going to redo again. Okay. I'm going to ask myself, what do I multiply x by to get negative x squared? And the answer would be negative x. Because x times negative x is negative x squared. And we'd actually want to probably do the work for that. So down here, let's do negative x times x plus 2. By the distributive property, negative x times x is negative x squared. And negative x times 2 is negative 2x. So then we're going to go ahead and up here write that down. Negative x squared minus 2x. And we're going to subtract. Negative x squared minus negative x squared is 0. Negative x minus negative 2x is 1x. And that's like plus. So minus negative 2x is plus 2x. Negative x plus 2x is just x. And then I'm going to go ahead and bring down the 2. And now the next part is to do the same thing again. Take this x and say, what do I multiply this x by to get x? And the answer would be 1. Then I need to multiply it. Well, this one I don't have to write it down here because I think you can do 1 times x plus 2. That is just x plus 2. And when I subtract, I just get 0. So there's no remainder. So x cubed plus x squared minus x plus 2 divided by x plus 2 is x squared minus x plus 1. Okay, we're going to do one more problem because sometimes some weird stuff comes up. For one thing, the problem on the right is written a little bit differently. And there's another weird thing is that right in here you notice that there's no x squared term. That's okay, but we just need to be aware of it. First off, I'm going to write it like the problem on our left. So I'm going to be dividing by x plus 4. And over here I'm going to write x cubed, but I'm actually going to include a 0x squared. And then minus 13x, and then plus 12. I'm going to leave a space for that. And that's going to really help us make sure we get the correct answer. Otherwise, we're probably going to mess stuff up. So make sure you include that 0x squared or whatever spot is missing in your problem. Okay, x times what is going to get me x cubed? And it's x squared. So and that is kind of similar to the last problem. And now I need to multiply x squared by these two things. Now I don't even have to write it down here. If I think of the distributive property, I can kind of think of, okay, this times this thing, and x squared times this thing. So x squared times x is going to get me x cubed. X squared times 4 is going to get me 4x squared. And I'm going to subtract. X cubed minus x cubed is 0. X squared minus 4x squared is minus 4x squared. Then I'm going to go ahead and bring down this other stuff. So I've got negative 4x squared minus 13x plus 12. I repeat the same step again. X times what is going to get me this minus 4x squared? And that's minus 4. I'm going to do the distributive property. I'm going to multiply negative 4 by both things over here in this x plus 4. So negative 4 times x. Oops, I forgot the x. There should be an x up there. Negative 4x times x is negative 4x squared. And negative 4x times 4 is negative 16x. And I'm going to subtract. Negative 4x squared minus negative 4x squared is 0. Negative 13x minus negative or plus 16x is 3x. And then I'm going to bring this plus 12 down. Okay, and lastly, I'm going to look over here and say, do this step one more time. X times what is 3x? And that would be 3. This 3 needs to be multiplied by the x and the 4. So 3 times the x is 3x. And 3 times the 4 is plus 12. This subtracts to 0, so I have no remainder. And my answer is x squared minus 4x plus 3. And that is how you divide polynomials.